Okay, so we went through and we picked out a couple of things that we thought people would recognize. So right here on line 718 is where our famous 5555 comes from. So this is where it all started, y'all, when it comes to the max stake days. So I just saw that and I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. That's like, so many of our things are based off of literally this one line of code and no one even knows it.
Yeah, that's right. Do you know the story of how it arrived at 5555?
No, tell me.
So I think if you click that, like, does it say audit report? Is there a link on the audit report?
Yep.
Oh yeah, so the security audit report. Let's see if that's it. But it was originally going to be like 50 years. It was going to be something like, I think like 10,000, like, or 12,000 days or something. But the problem that the auditor flagged was that for like, based on the way that it calculates the yield on the stake, like that long of a stake could potentially be infeasible to end. Not just infeasible, it's too expensive to end, but actually couldn't fit in a single block, because each calculation that the smart contract does during any transaction, it uses a little bit of gas, and there's a finite amount of gas that can fit on a single block. There's like 30 million units of gas that can fit on a single block. And even based on the increase in the gas cost per particular type of transaction, as it stands now, only just over 2 max length stakes can even fit on that block. And so the end stake, the max stake, was originally going to be like 3 or 4 times longer than it is, but the auditor said, hey, like, you're going to have to shrink this, because those long stakes beyond a certain limit, depending on what the future ETH gas block limit is, they may not be able to fit on a block. And so that's what they, shrunk it there.
Yeah.
So that's how it arrived at 5555. It was originally like 10 something.
Yeah. Okay. So I found it. It's 18,200.
Yeah. 18. Yeah. There you go.
That's a lot.
We would have had people getting 18,200 tattoos.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. 5555 is, but yeah, that's how it arrived at that.
Oh my gosh. That is interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that that's why. I should go through and read the audit.
Yeah, it's definitely a good read.
Yeah, I think it also allows for later adopters to actually get some meat off the bone too. Like if you allowed people to stake 20 years, then for 20 years there's always going to be a staker that has way more meat of the bone or way bigger piece of the pie than you. So I think coming down to the Cuatro Cinco really helped out in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think so too. But even that is long. Like, it's like,
it is.
I guess now it's 3 years in. That's already a fifth of the way. So I guess that's,
we need the meme of like poking something and it's the HEX stake. Do something. No, it's not supposed to do anything.
I think we'll see a lot of craziness at that midway point when you can redeem and get your principal out. But I guess over that whole year, probably that next year, because like anyone who staked before big payday, if you early end stake at any time, you lose your big payday bonus. And like, so, for stakes ending now, that's like 30 or 40% of the principal. But for stakes ending in, every day that goes by, because the longer pays better, that amount that you're giving up for an early end stake at any time grows. And so the long-term stakes, it could be, I forget what I'll have to go and look at those, like a 15-year bigger pays better, or big payday payout for 15-year stake from early on. Like that could be a huge amount that, like something like 300 or 400%, I think. And so though, like that's like giving up, a huge amount, and you spent 7 years. So you're basically just getting back your principal as if you didn't stake at all. And who knows how many like bull cycles have happened in that, where you're staked and then you ultimately just like take out your principal. Like that could happen. That could have a lot of that could happen at that halfway point. You know, especially if price goes up a lot. You know, it makes that like you're losing a little more tolerable.
The next few years and the next bull run, it'll be interesting to see how many emergency end stakes, and then just so 7.5 years from 2020, you know, from 2027 to 2030, including people making 15-year stakes in the last couple of years too. It'll be interesting to see the emergency end stakes through the bull market and the people who don't, or just wait until they get the principal back, or want to sacrifice. If HEX goes to $5 and they're like, actually, I don't mind losing some of that. We'll see. But Gift, do you have something you want to say?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, did you find that in the code, like where it's doing the math? I see you get the longer pays better, but the early penalty.
So
it's I think further up. There's a lot of lines. There's like 2,000 lines of code.
Yeah. So a helpful way to look so if you click outline right there.
Oh, perfect.
You see that? And then, so like all that stuff. So like the context, the IERC, the safe math, all that stuff is just like, those are like the external, like kind of boilerplate libraries. Even that ERC20, that's just like the standard ERC20 library. So that one is that globals and utility. That's a HEX contract one.
Gotcha.
So probably a function that would talk about that the penalties would be like some like calc penalty or something.
Calc, payout, and early penalty maybe. 1724.
We're just gonna scroll.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. So then as you scroll down through there, if you go down to like if served days equals 0.
So that's if you like stake and then before 5 o'clock on the day you stake, you unstake, I think. So it's just like like you can back out of your stake during that day. And then, and then the penalty, well, I know there it shows the late penalty, but yeah, so the penalty function has that part about like the big payday. I think it's on calc. It must be. Let's see penalty. Let's see what the penalty days. So penalty days is the staked days param plus 1/2, and then so that like that's what it uses to on the estimate payout reward day, I think is how it. I don't know. No, we gotta have to dig in a little bit, but yeah, that's the function that does the penalties.
Yeah, and as you keep going down, it keeps filling in more and more of the stuff that like we talk about all the time, or that we've been talking about all the time for like 3 years. And you start to see a lot of that stuff. Like you got split penalty proceeds, right? So split the penalty 50-50 between origin and stake penalty total. So it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm ever saying something that's way off, but the stake penalty total is something that it calculates every day, and whatever pot that fills up in penalty rewards is what distributes to the stakers, right? Because the other half, the other 50%, is the origin address that receives those.
Yeah, so it's sent to the origin address in real time, but then it's like accounted for in the like daily payout value, and then that's what your like when you end your stake loops through every day's value in that daily values list, and it adds up all the like the total payout divided by total payout times T-shares times like the payout per T-share value.
Yeah. Also a question, if you keep going, there's also it plugs into the share rate update. So does that mean that it is prepared to bump the T-share rate if somebody early end stakes, but still it's like a massive yield, like maybe it's like a day one staker that ends like a day before their stake is due, so that there's a scenario where it could ratchet up the T-share rate even in a early end stake?
Yeah, I believe so. I haven't looked into the fine detail of that particularly, but I think it broadly it checks to see if the payout amount plus your principal divided by the current share rate would get more T shares than what it started with. And that could happen for, especially later on in a stake that, like, if it's a really big stake and it's like in the last couple days and, something like that may, or depending, it could be one that straddles the big payday at some point. It would have to be a big stake in general. But because I mean, the main thing that it's like every stake can move up share rate, but regardless of like all these small stakes that just happen to move it up based on the timing in which they're ended, the largest, longest stake always moves it up to the maximum amount that it would have, and it goes there regardless of what happened before it. And so any stake, like a lot of stakes do move the share rate up, but the like maximum that it's going to move up is you can calculate that by just looking at every stake that starts between day, like say just, to collect a lot, maybe like day 1 and 30. And then throughout that day, it's like, most of the days are covered. And so it's like, the maximum share rate based on the earnings of each one. You have to estimate the future earnings, which you can't fully do with accuracy, but you can be somewhat accurate in that. And so but those are the ones that really ratchet it up. And ones that have a penalty could be eligible, for that, especially if they're really big and really old. But also maybe not because of the big payday penalty, because there would have been one like the day before or the day after that, with the, even if it was to end early and you give up your big payday bonus, there may be something, that prevent that from being the case.
Hey, Max, jump to 1830 real quick for me, or 1828. There's actually a note in here that is kind of a nuanced note to like the question I was just asking. See right there where it's noted out there realistically?
Hey, that's my name. Share rate max.
Share rate max.
How'd you find it? I'm in the code. Richard knows.
It says realistically this can't happen, but there are contrived theoretical scenarios that can lead to extreme values of new share rate. So it's capped to prevent them anyway. I mean, they're just like you think that's Dev Kyle's notes? Like I always kind of wondered like who writes the notes and such in projects where we don't know that there's only one dev involved. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know who the guy was that actually wrote this code, because I know Kyle wrote a lot of the modeling stuff. I think from his interview a while back, he said he didn't really write any of the Solidity code, but he had kind of like helped, review and that. But I do remember on an old stream, I can't fully remember like all the details, but I remember Richard saying that like he'd gone through a handful of people that were like trying to build it, and like the first guy didn't work out, second guy just couldn't get it done, and then finally some new guy came in and just made it happen. So it sounds like there's whoever that guy was, who just made it happen. Like that's who I kind of ascribe everything to, but I don't even know who that is. I think it's out. I think people know his name, but
they probably definitely got a leg up after. I'm sure Richard kept all the code from the previous ones, and the third guy that comes in is like, oh, this is so much easier now. I got all the context, and I can just like figure this stuff out.
Yeah, especially if they've tried stuff that they knew wasn't going to work, and so just better like starting like design parameters just from
that.